So we actually saw them. We saw all the infielders working on the back turf field.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. If this was the same conditions in Orlando, I'm not looking to crap on anybody, but if you needed to get that many pitchers there working on a Sunday, what would have happened?
Well, you know what? We did throw in the batting cages there.
Okay.
I mean, we do live batting practices and everything for that same reason, so you can keep your pitching online because, this time of year, it's, whether they're a little banged up, sore, weather. I mean, because Cranny's got this thing mapped out, and you just hate to catch up in that regard, and we're not going to have to because of the situation.
Brian Snitker, manager of the Braves, with us as we are in Northport. Spring training clearly underway. We saw Spencer Strider out there earlier. At this point in time in the season, to go back to what you said about Rick Kranitz, the pitching coach, he has everything mapped out. What do you hope to see from a guy like Strider?
Oh man, what you just saw out there for the up down that he did was really good, and I didn't expect anything less from him. I mean,
Is it fair to the hitters?
Well, you know what? I mean, those guys wanted to hit, and credit to them because they didn't have to show up till today, but they've been here and put themselves in a position to be able to go out there and take live batting practice off Spencer, which that's not an easy ride, no. and it's good for Spencer too, I think, to face two guys like that, and he can get a little feedback and stuff he's working on and everything. So it was really good. I thought both the guys, I thought they swung the bat pretty well off of him, which they say just the at-bats were good, and Spence I thought looked really, really good.
Does it always come to, when it's near, spring training, come to you as excitement, butterflies still, even after all these years?
The drive down here is still one of my favorite things to do over the course of the years, that drive to spring training, because you're excited. I mean, you sit there and you wonder if you got everything packed, and you're not really, don't know if you're ready to leave, but once you get on the interstate like that, man, it's a really good feeling, and then to come to a place like this is just it really does, it gets you all jacked up.
When you heard about Chris Sale, the acquisition, first thing you thought of, and then when you talked to him, maybe what was added on top of your first thought?
First thing I thought of was, I love having a left-hander like that in our division. And then when I talked to him, it was even better. Even better. I could just hear the excitement in his voice, and the anticipation of being here was really, really good, and just to know how well he threw at the end of the year last year, so it was really exciting to get a guy of that quality and put him in the mix.
I know you don't handle the finances, but tell me mentally, when Alex says we're going to give you 2 years, what does that do for a player, in your opinion, even a veteran?
No, I think it's awesome to know that you just that you're settled in. I mean, it's just there's that distraction or that thought. We're human, and we're going to think about that kind of stuff. I'm not the player of that caliber or whatever, but it's things that over my time, it's things that enter your mind, and I think for him to know that he's got 2 years here, it's going to seem like probably a lifetime. It's settling, I think, to know that you have that.
Brian Snitker, Braves manager, is here with us on the Fan 680 and 93.7 FM, especially before the games begin on Saturday. There's not a lot to talk about day in, day out. What are your thoughts on everybody now talking about the World Series or bust attitude?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's just these guys are driven. I mean, and they're driven to excel. I'm kind of more of a take today type thing and win today, but I think it's hard to look at like that with the long season and what we're going to go on, but I know, because it just tells me the guys feel like we have a really good team. They have high expectations for themselves, as do I. I mean, I have high expectations for our club. I mean, we expect to do well, we expect to win. Like I said, it's a big difference from when I first got here, when I used to say that I used to drive to the ballpark and hope we won, and then we knew we'd have to do everything and play pretty much a perfect game to win. And then all of a sudden, I remember making that drive one day, and it's like, I expect to win now, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, I don't really understand it, because there's no scenario, unless you guys win a World Series, where as a Braves fan, I'm going to say, boy, but that was a great year. Yeah. There's no scenario. It's not going 7 games in this one, 5 games in that one. There's no scenario that would say this was a good year. You can win 110 games, don't win a World Series, and I'm sorry, as a fan, I'm going to say wasn't a good year.
And you know what? We've worked really hard to put ourselves in that position. because, like I said, when I first got here, there wasn't any of that kind of talk or whatever. Now I said we've worked really hard to put ourselves in that position, and that's fine. I'm good with it.
I want to ask you about Chris Sale, because that's a guy that's been at the top, and he's been the injured guy when you're out of sight, out of mind, and it burns certain people maybe more than others. Do you honestly believe there's a mentality of guys in the postseason, give them the ball, they're going to be better than other guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely, I do. I mean, I think there's guys that just can't wait for that stage, and you see it, and, you know, over the years, and we've had those guys, and we do have those guys, and you know, I think there's something to that. And you know, something to that with teams, but as we know, you can have all that, you can have everything going, and things just may not. It's baseball. I mean, it's still, you're playing a series in baseball, and we know over the course of 7 months, it just doesn't always go as planned.
We have talked about, Jeff Francoeur has as well, Austin Riley being that guy that's morphing into a leader now. Have you sensed that from him?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a bunch of them in there. You know, him, Matt Olson, Max Fried, Ozzie. I mean, there's just a lot of guys in that club. Charlie come in, you know, there's a lot of these guys that come with instant credibility over what they've accomplished in their career, and it's a really good place in that room over there.
If you want to keep current Braves out, you can keep current Braves out. So I'm going to give you a condition on this. If I asked you your 1 or 2 or 3 favorite guys, it might not have been the best player, but they're the guy that you said, I look forward to seeing them at the ballpark. I know in the offseason they're going to do. They entertain you, whatever it might be. Do you have a few guys that you actually would put as sort of on that list?
You know, one of the guys that I remember when I had him even in the minor leagues, I couldn't wait to get to the ballpark to be around Rafael Furcal. That kid was so energetic, and it was so much fun to be around. He was just, I always kind of felt like he came to the ballpark and made everybody better just by him being him, with that energy and the enthusiasm that he had and how he appreciated every day. And he was a guy, you know, Mark Lemke was one of them guys. I'd get to the ballpark and think I was there early, and Limmer would be there, and he'd have his chew, and he'd be throwing the glove in his or the ball in his glove, and it'd be almost like, where's everybody at?
You know what it was? I used to say this about him. He's the equivalent of what we call a gym rat in basketball.
Yeah.
He's just the guy that's there. You turn around and boom, he's there. You leave and you go, I think he's still here.
Yeah.
I got another one then. So if you liked Furcal, give me a guy or two that you just said Bobby Cox used to say Edgar Renteria was the easiest name he could write into the lineup. He just knew where he was going to hit, but nobody talked about him.
Right.
Is there a guy or two that you just go, hey, man, if not for this guy? I think Prado might have been one of those guys.
I was just going to say Martin Prado was
Okay.
the next name out of my mouth. I mean, you talk about a ball player's ball player, and I always said that's the biggest compliment I can give a guy is he's a ball player. And that was Martin Prado through and through. And he's the one guy that when you did leave and I would leave and I could hear somebody banging around and there'd be the music box on and the bat cracking and you'd leave and it'd be him. I mean, it was just he loved to play baseball, and it was just he's just one of my top guys also.
Brian Snitker is here with us, Braves manager. The way you described Rafael Furcal sounds like you can describe Ozzie Albies the same way.
Yeah, Ozzie same way. I just talked about Ozzie earlier. I said, you know what, you want to play if you play the game the way Ozzie does, you're going to play it right. And he is a wonderful, wonderful young man. Just I mean, how consistent he is. He comes to the ballpark. He doesn't matter. I see him out there in the morning. He's taking grounders. He's doing picks. He's doing this, he's doing that, and loving every second of it. That kid loves to play. He loves to compete, and he's just a pure joy to be around.
Thoughts on Jared Kelnick?
I'm sorry?
Thoughts on Jared Kelnick?
I'm excited to see. He's another one. I can't wait for the games to start, just so we can plug him in and see. I've just heard all about all the talent. I was watching him hit today. Everything that this young kid brings, and I'm excited for the games to start. For the guys that I don't know, to see him and see what we have.
Do you want to forget sometimes guys like Michael Harris? He's so young. He struggled for a while last year, and we forget. I mean, he was on the fast track to the majors, and I guess you just kind of give a guy like that some time to work through it, and obviously it pays off.
Well, I think last year Michael's he missed some valuable time. When you miss early, because everybody's trying to get their toe hold when we leave spring training, and then when you miss time like he did, and the extent of time that he missed, and you come back, guys are starting to hit on all cylinders, and it's tough to come back when you miss time like that. And I, you know what, he hung with himself, and we kept putting him in there.
It was crazy.
And then he got her going.
And Marcell Ozuna, he credits Marcell Ozuna for coming up to him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at what that guy did.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking about that this morning in my office. Just, you know, thinking about where Marcel was in April, and then when he hit that, you know, 40 and 100, it was just, God, I felt probably as good as he did. Just the fact that he accomplished that.
The other part with Michael Harris is I don't know if he'd ever experienced anything like that, where I'm not going to play, I'm going to watch, and all of a sudden, you know, your numbers aren't your numbers because you just haven't played yet. You got to make sure that doesn't screw you up.
No, I know. I mean, it's there's a lot of things, I always say the layers that they got to peel off to becoming a major leaguer, and they're going to go through things they never thought possible at this level. And you know what? That determines on the good ones and them going forward and continuing to progress, and guys that maybe get lost in the shovel, and all of a sudden you're using them as examples to other guys that, you know, are coming up.
I saw something. Do you want to play? You were here in 2018. I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were here in 2018. Do you have any idea what your opening day roster, what your opening day lineup looked like that year?
Yeah, there's a couple of them that I've looked at thinking, oh, my Lord.
Yeah. Do you know who played third base for you? Opening day roster. Who was your third baseman?
Donis Garcia.
Flaherty. Who was your center
that
fielder?
year.
Yeah, who was your center fielder?
Wasn't Ender.
It was Ender.
Okay.
Who was your right fielder?
Frank Hoare.
No, Nick Markakis.
Okay.
So 2018. The point is, we ask you. You've been doing this for 40 whatever
I know.
years, and at what point does it actually all start to run together at times?
Oh, it has. Believe me. There's some of those years I don't want to remember, although we won the division that year.
Yeah.
So.
I just wanted to look at this. Look at your bench.
Yeah, Preston Tucker.
Preston Tucker started in left field for you.
Yeah.
And then you had Kurt Suzuki, which feels like it was a decade ago.
No, I know. It's because we had
Who is that, by the way? Who's C. Stewart?
That was Chris Stewart. He was an extra catcher.
Okay.
He's
All right.
a tall right-handed hitting catcher.
I'm glad you knew.
Yeah.
I had no.
No, I
I'm
do
looking at this
remember.
going, I don't remember who the hell that is.
Let me see. Well, pull it back up. Let me look
All
at
right.
it again.
Well, yeah, this is your opening day roster. And
Brian Snitker, this is your life.
And I remember that. I mean, what a great job Flaherty did too that year in filling in, and you know, Dansby's was just a kid. And Preston actually had a really good first half for us.
But do you remember, you were here in the 90s, and every year into the 2000s, there were real changes in the starting eight.
Well, I told these guys, in that 14-year run, there was no less than 10 new players every year.
Every year,
that.
on a 25-man roster.
I looked, and I think the second year, the Blue Jays won it 2 years in a row, and the second year, I think they had 12 new guys starting that year after winning the World Series.
And if young guys don't understand, it's a dog-eat-dog world.
Oh, no, it is. And I tell these guys, too, and I'll tell them in my thing tomorrow, that until you get a baseball card, I mean, this stuff's real out here in spring training. But that baseball card, you got to have one of those before you're going to give a pass. I mean, and we're talking about Mark Lemke. He told me every year, even when he was like World Series hero and everything, he went to camp thinking he had to earn his job that year. It's not a bad way to do it either.
Well, remember, there were 60 rounds of drafts.
Yeah.
Then it was 40. Now it's, I think, 20. But that still means that somebody right down there, one spot away, is ready to take your job if you let them.
We've signed a lot of guys in here with big league time, and guys that have, you know, they've played a little bit, and it's pretty good, you know, to have that depth also, because as we see, we end up using it all.
And the one thing you don't have to worry about, a guy fighting for his job, that guy is Ronald Acuña Jr. And you said it, it's scary. He could still be even better. Get better.
Absolutely. I said he might be the only guy that's ever going to surpass the records that he sends. That's humanly possible to do that. It's crazy. And you look at him now. I mean, he's bouncing around. I remember like he did last year. He was going to camp early. You know, wanted to play winter ball. I mean, holy cow!
I don't.
He just loves playing baseball, doesn't he?
He loves playing baseball.
He'll play all year.
I said he doesn't get tired. I mean, he gets sleepy. He doesn't get tired.
Right.
And you know,
like
and he
that.
loves playing baseball.
So let me ask this, though, because it sounds so ridiculous. I know the injury, and the injury is never going to be a good thing. You never want it. But is there a part of you that thinks the injury maybe got him reinvigorated or more intensely set on being the best player in baseball?
I think what that does for me is it says it's how fragile this whole thing can be.
And you realize it as a player?
And you appreciate the fact that you're having an opportunity to go out there and play, and it probably does give in. Again, it gives you a new perspective on things and makes you appreciate every day even more. I tell these guys all the time, it's you know what, you're never guaranteed tomorrow. That's why you just try to suck the life out of today.
I sat down with Matt Olson at Braves Fan Fest. His year 2 obviously was phenomenal last year. If I would have given you his numbers and said, by the way, he's not even going to come close to winning an MVP. The good news for you is you actually had the MVP on top of that.
Right.
But Matt Olson was not really going to sniff an MVP with those numbers. He brought up the fact that Sean Murphy in his second year, he thinks Murphy is going to be the guy that has the breakout type year.
I'm totally with him, and especially for a catcher. I know Matt had the added hometown guy, being traded for an icon, all that, and then Murph comes in and has to learn a whole new pitching staff on top of performing, and he understood how important that is to us. That game planning, handling the pitchers, that whole ball of wax right there. And now I think coming in, you're going to see a different guy in there.
Settled.
And he had a pretty good, he was a starting catcher in the National League All-Star game, and so I think it's a year even you got a chance of doing that with him too.
Is there a chance Darno falls into that next line of a guy who could manage if he wanted to?
I totally think that.
Yeah.
I totally think that, and you know what? I was like, if I walked out that door today, I could put him in that seat and not feel bad at all.
Why so many pitchers and catchers? Why do they make successful managers?
Well, catcher's number one, I think, just because you're just so enthralled in the whole game. I mean, it's just you're engulfed in everything. And you know what? You probably have played another position. You can do a lot of things. You see all those guys. You watch, and you're already, you've already been a part of probably the hardest position on the field to play. And pitchers too. I mean, pitchers. A lot of these guys. There's some really sharp pitchers I've been around that see the whole game. They know what that good infielder looks like. They know balls that should be caught. They're the hitters. They're some of the best hitting coaches I had in the minor leagues were the pitching coaches. They'd throw to them and they could read swings and things like that, but I think those guys are just so in tune with the whole game and everything that it entails that they do make good.
As a catcher, you almost have to be like a psychologist as well.
Oh, too.
Right? You
Yeah,
have to pick
absolutely.
everybody's spirits up, handle everybody.
You got 13 individual guys out there, and you got to know what button to push on each and every.
And they're not all going to be going great at the same time. It's not going to be a party for everybody.
And more than likely, it's those hard times are a lot more prevalent than the good times.
I know this sounds sort of ridiculous, but I've talked to players who played in the major leagues for 10 years, and you leave a 10-minute conversation, you go, I know you played. How many of these did you actually watch? And it's not a knock, but the reality is that's why I think the catchers. Yeah. There's not a moment where you're not watching a baseball game.
Exactly. No, I mean, and just say the guy, when they're not catching, they're sitting there talking Sal. They're talking about pitch selection, this or that. They're talking with the pitchers. I mean, they're so into it with them. Even if they're not in the game, they're talking with it in between innings. So I think we're very fortunate. We're blessed to have I wouldn't trade my two guys for anybody in baseball. We have two of the best catchers going.
Do you know what we got a big kick out of talking to you at FanFest? When we found out we knew that you laid sewer pipe, or didn't you do something underground?
I did oil pipe. In the oil yards, I would do that. I'd go to work in 5 o'clock in the morning, and some days wouldn't get back for 2 days because you'd have a rush job or something on the oil field, and you just wouldn't get home.
So how did you get that job?
I had a buddy of mine that lived in Thibodaux, Louisiana. I wintered down there, and he knew somebody that knew somebody, and they offered me a job when I was a minor league player, and so I worked out of Morgan City, Louisiana.
Were you ever in better shape than coming off that job? Now, you probably beat up a little bit.
No, well, yeah, you stunk really bad,
yeah.
and you know what? You work with people literally from labor camps is who you work with every day. And but you know what, the old guy that was the lead on this crew that I was on was an old football coach from Biloxi, Mississippi. They called him Coach, and he was a pistol, I'll tell you that.
Well, then we found out you worked for the Pabst Blue Ribbon Company, which was amazing.
Beer. I delivered beer. My dad was a Pabst salesman and knew the distributor in Decatur, Illinois. They'd set up my mom and dad, and I used to deliver beer when I wasn't old enough to be doing it.
Well, my dad had a bar, and I remember the beer truck guys, they would drop off the beer, and they would have a beer.
I said, you delivered the beer, and you had a beer.
Exactly.
And, there's many times I went to American Legion practice, and eyes crossed and everything.
And then your dad, I don't know I'm a Pabst Blue Ribbon guy, but then he sort of got elevated to brown liquor, did he not?
Well, no, and then he was Illinois state manager for Jim Beam for over 25 years. So my uncles loved my dad.
All the time in the garage. Everything was in the garage.
Back of the garage. Yeah, he was Ace Hart or the Ace Liquors.
Yeah, when he needed to get away, it was party time in the garage.
Yeah.
What
exactly
other?
right.
So we might as well just finish up with this. What other jobs did you actually have?
I built houses. And I hated that because I'm scared of heights. And when you had to put that roof on, a lot of those guys that walked those 2x4 walls, I'd drag a ladder on the inside of the thing because there's no way I'd have fell off. You know, you're 3 stories up. I couldn't eat lunch that whole week, you know, because I was so nervous.
So roofing week was not a great week for you.
No, roofing week.
Down on the
wasn't
ground,
good.
you were
yeah,
okay.
I was okay on
Do you
the
give
ground.
yourself some time to appreciate everything right now? You talked about the circumstances when you first got the job.
Yeah.
And where you are now.
I know it's you know what, I was talking to Terry Pendleton this morning. He came in, we were kind of catching up, and I was talking about just that thing. I'll sit out there, and there's been a lot more than once over the course of the summer. I'll look out and see this and wonder what the heck am I doing? You know, it's where did this come from?
Now, I'm not putting your business on Front Street, but there are guys who have the sort of big gated community, and that's the way the game has gone. You don't have to work during the off season. But I used to say this about the Falcons coach, Mike Smith. The one thing I knew about Mike, when he pulled up to his driveway every night, he appreciated his life because he was a guy that was, he worked. He was the coffee guy. He was coming from parents who were teachers, and he thought he was going to take that road if he couldn't really get an inroad into coaching. When you pull up to your driveway and you have a sense of peace, that really is an incredible feeling when you get to an age where you go, I'm probably going to add years to my life. You know, stress at a certain point does not do the body well.
No, and you know what my wife and I talk about all the time? I mean, she's always like, how did we get here? You know, we're backstage at the Grand Ole Opry at the winter meetings and talking to all these artists and people like back there with all the country royalty or, you know,
And they know who you are.
Yeah, no, that's another thing.
Yeah. Braves country.
But yeah, no, I said it cuts a big swath, man, and it's real. I keep saying that every year. Braves country is it's a real thing. And
so give me another job other than building houses.
well, building houses, delivering beer, working on a pipe yard, walking beans, baling hay.
What's walking beans mean?
You walk through the beans with a hook and you cut the weeds out of them.
Now, how do you get instructed how to do that, or is it just here, go work?
It's kind of like, yeah, you just kind of grow up, and where I grew up, you grew up doing that, and you'd put 3 rows here and 3 rows on the other side, and you were responsible for those 3 rows. And if you look back and there was, you know, weeds still hanging out over there, that farmer's probably going to get rid of you. And then when you baled hay, you knew, I'm not baling for that guy because his bales are too heavy, you know, stuff like that.
So you figured all this stuff out. Hey,
Yeah.
listen, it's making a good
Detassel
manager.
and corn, that might have been the worst
What is
thing
that?
ever. Detassel and corn.
I don't even know what that means.
You take the tassels off of the seed corn, and then they crossbreed them, and then they get a variety of.
How did
of
you
corn.
find all these jobs?
I grew up in central Illinois. My backyard was a field, so that was just kind of. People were farmers and they worked in Caterpillar Tractor Company and things like that. So it was just kind of, you grew up doing that.
So what was your first year in a big city? Like, I'm not trying to, but
probably when I went to school in New Orleans. I mean, that was probably as big a city as I've ever been in.
and what'd you think of that?
At the
Like,
time.
did it swallow you up at times?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, because like I said, grew up. We had no stoplights, and we had 3 taverns, and 1 grocery store, and
Yeah, nobody's walking beans down Bourbon Street.
no, they're not walking beans.
3
on Bourbon
taverns.
Street.
You know what people in New Orleans say about 3 taverns? Ha!
Well, that's when I went down there. I was like, geez, if you can see over the bar, they'd serve you down there, you know.
You used to be able to drive through. I don't know if you can still do it or not. You get daiquiris. You drive through in the car. They hand it to you, and off you go.
No, there was a different world there.
What about big city? Like, were you sort of enthralled by New York and
I never.
It's
Well,
speed.
I never. I went
even
to,
when you went on the road.
I went to Chicago because my dad grew up there, so my grandparents
Okay.
went to Chicago. I never went to Wrigley Field till I got to the major leagues as
Wow.
a coach.
had you been to a professional baseball
Yeah,
game?
they used to take us to. My dad and my uncle would take us to St. Louis.
Okay.
We were closer to St. Louis than we were Chicago.
So who was your guy then growing up? I don't know if I know
Well,
this.
I grew up watching WGN, watching the Cubs, and my dad was from Chicago, so I kind of, I was like a big Billy Williams, Jim Hickman, Ron Santo, Randy Hundley, all those
the
guys.
best team to maybe never win anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, when I was a sophomore in high school, I hit like Glenn Beckert. When I was a junior, I hit like Jim Hickman, and then I got to meet those guys. Got to meet Jim Hickman, who's one of the nicest men I've ever met in my life. When I was a minor league manager, and he was roving with the Reds.
Well, Snit, we always appreciate you coming by and sharing some memories and looking ahead to this season as well. Looking forward to the weekend. Looking forward to another great season.
No, so we are too. I mean, we're so excited to be down here and get this thing rolling again. I think everybody, those guys are like a bunch of high school kids in there right now. They're excited to get going.
It seems like the off season's the right amount of time.
It is. You're ready to go when it's over. You're ready. You've had enough off season.
And it's cliche to say, but this is a really good clubhouse, is it not?
It's a great clubhouse. It's not even good. It's great. It's and I've told guys that come in. I was talking to David Fletcher today. I've met him for the first time. He came in. It's like, you're gonna love that room in there. It's special.
Well, it's a special time to be a Braves fan. Braves country, like you said, is real. Snit, always good seeing you. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate you. All right.
You got it.